lock in. Please do like, subscribe and share if any of this video resonates with you, or you think, oh yeah, that resonates with the person down the street, or the neighbours opposite, or somebody I met in the supermarket, because this is something that mainstream media is not picking up on, yet this is something that is affecting every single one of our futures. And how directly that is some people say is ambiguous, but effectively what is happening to the youth of today will be us in a generation. And we will need to rely on the youth of today at some point in some of our lives. And we will also be walking alongside people who this is affecting right now. And I've always said that you can judge a government by how it treats its vulnerable in society. And this is children we're talking about today. It could just as easily be pensioners tomorrow. It could be farmers. It could be people my age. It could be any group in society who is vulnerable and needs their voice being heard. And we are suppressing voices like I've never seen before. So please do like, subscribe and share if this does resonate with you. And even if it doesn't directly affect you at the minute as you think, if you think about how it could affect you, even if it is financially, it will affect you. So we have a tweet from the Department for Education, and this, where to start? It says, "Your voice matters and we're listening. We want this to be the biggest national conversation on SEND in a generation, to deliver better outcomes and make sure all children can achieve and thrive. Join us in the first of a series of online events this Wednesday, the 3rd of December at 6 o'clock, giving parents and those in the SEND community the opportunity to shape reforms." Okay, so you can go, I should imagine it's all booked up, but you can go online and see if you can get on that if you wanted to join on it. Why am I highlighting this? Well, when they say your voice matters, that's the statement. Your voice matters and we're listening. Go over then to Parliament TV and have a listen to the debate on the Children and Wellbeing Bill. Now, it's ginormous, this bill. It's absolutely massive. It feels like it's a bill that covers almost every bone of contention that could possibly ever happen to a child and their family, and it's condensed in one bill. And somebody, a friend of mine, has noted that in this ginormous bill that covers so many different areas, it is impossible to digest and dissect, but she has, and it mentions well-being twice. Now, if you're going to have such a ginormous bill talking about education and well-being, and it mentions well-being twice, I think that sets the tone for where we're at. So when the Department for Education talk about SEND and say that they're listening, it becomes increasingly clear that they haven't, they're not, and they don't want to. And we retrace our steps back. So we retrace back to the VAT on education. Now, let's forget for a moment the people that could or couldn't afford it. Let's forget that right now. Let's not talk about the mainstream. Let's talk about the children that are in independent schools because they have special educational needs or disabilities. Now, they make up a massive percentage of the independent sector. Many of them have their fees paid for by local authorities through EHCPs. That's an educational healthcare plan. That's something that parents have to fight for, and I mean literally fight to get. And that is support from the state when they know, understand and recognise that the state cannot provide the care that these children need, but the independent sector can. So they pay a percentage of their fees. Now, these are like gold dust, and because there is no money in local authorities, they're not given out very freely. So then what you have is a very big demographic of parents whose children cannot go to state education. So they are finding any which way and how they can to support their children in the independent sector. Now, when VAT on education was introduced, these parents fought, they went to the High Court and fought, saying it was discriminatory, and the High Court agreed. The High Court said that adding VAT on education was attacking the most vulnerable children in society. It was limiting their life chances because what it was doing was putting them back in the system that they tried to escape. So we're all good at vilifying parents. We're all good at saying you're so rich, just pay the extra money. But the reality was, and is, there was no any extra money to pay. So these children with special educational needs and disabilities went back into the state system. Once in the state system, Bridget Phillipson decided that she was going to punish anyone that didn't go to school or didn't behave in the way that she deemed appropriate. Now, people will turn around and say naughty children. What I think we're all missing is the children's voice. We're all missing understanding why these children aren't going to school, because we're not listening. So you could turn around and say they're just naughty. In my day, we'd have got this. In my day, we've all got a story about what happened in our day. And it's generally because at some point in our day, we faced that punishment. We can all remember it. We all know what it felt like. And we all had our own reasons for behaving the way that we did. Yet we seem to gloss over that with that's just how it was, as though that's okay. And so bringing back these Victorian measures is okay because it happened to us. But if we really drill down and think about why we might as children have been punished, why we might have faced the wrath, faced the cane, faced the slipper, been sat in isolation, had detention. We knew what it felt like to go back to our parents and tell them that. We knew what it felt like at the time. Of course, some children can just be naughty. It's in our DNA. We were children once. It's what we did. But there are also so many children who have significant needs that are not being met in schools in the state system. So there are children who go to school terrified. Now, you know and I know what happens when we're scared. Our anxiety comes out in many different ways. It could come out that we shout, that we swear, that we lose our temper, that we don't get on an aeroplane, that we can't walk to the bus, that we don't want to go into a group setting, that we don't want to go to a party, that we don't like answering the door, that we can't open a letter that we think has come from a bill or a bank statement that we know says we have no money. We understand what anxiety and fear feels like. And as we're adults, we give ourselves permission to decide whether we're going to let that in or let it out or how we're going to deal with it. You don't get that when you're a child. You go to school. And if that anxiety for you comes out in any of the ways that it does for us as adults, then you're punished. We get away with it as adults because we're sort of masters of our own destiny unless we're breaking the law, and then in which case things look a bit different. But children are punished. They're sent to Bridget Phillipson's behaviour hubs, attendance hubs. Parents are punished. Parents are fined. Children don't want to go to school because they're scared, because the environment doesn't work for them, that it's too loud, that there's too many children. We know there's too many children because we know that the independent sector has moved over to the state sector, and the already overcrowded state sector is now completely overcrowded. And we know that those children that left the state sector because they had special educational needs are now going back there, the boomerang effect. And for some parents, that's not good enough. For some parents, they can't afford the independent sector anymore, but they can't traumatise their child anymore. Perhaps they understand what it was like. Perhaps they remember the slipper, the cane, the detention, the isolation. Who knows? Perhaps they're just parents and they just don't want their child facing this abject fear. So they go for home education. What's wrong with that? Nothing. If you want to home educate your child because you know your child and you know that one size does not fit all, you know that mainstream isn't right for your child, but you also know that you've been priced out the market of the system that was right for your child, so you want to home educate them. Well, there was once upon a time when you could do that. But now with the Children and Wellbeing Bill, which says wellbeing twice in the entire bill, this is becoming harder and harder because parents are being seen as guilty before they're even allowed to educate their children at home. Guilty of what, you may ask? Safeguarding. They are seen as a risk. They have to prove as parents that they are capable and safe of educating their children. Now, we've all heard the Sarah Sharif case. It's horrendous. I actually find it really difficult to talk about. Sarah Sharif's parents were not representative of home educators. They were not. Yet because Sarah Sharif was not in school, and because social services let her down, and because the state let her down, and because the doctors let her down, and because every adult around her let her down, children are now being let down by a government bill that wants to punish parents for wanting the best for their children. The Sarah Sharif case should never, ever have happened. We all know that. But it's not representative of home education. So here we have a bill that wants to collate children's data, that wants parents to prove that they are capable of educating their child. And if the council, so a council, not a group of educators, not a group of academics, not a group of professionals who work within children's education, psychology and well-being, not them, a council, a group of counsellors, if they do not agree that this child's needs will be better met at home and that state and mainstream is best, the parents have their rights taken away from them. Can you imagine not being your child's voice? Can you imagine your parents not being your voice? Can you imagine your grandparents not being your parents' voices? And some people will be able to imagine it. Some people will know what that feels like. Some adults watching this will know exactly what that feels like. And it won't be nice. It won't bring back nice memories. But yet here we are imposing a bill that does exactly that today in 2025. Education in the bill is state education as deemed fit by the Labour government about what they think your child needs, why they think your child should be at school. Your child, as we've said, may not be able to go to school because of neurodivergent issues, disability issues, so many issues. But who's listening? Who's asking them? Who's asking them to tell their story of what it's like, what happens when they go to school? I've shared with you openly about what my daughter feels when she goes to school. It's not easy, and it's a challenge that no child should have to face. Yet the law says that they do. And the narrative that comes out is if you are a home educator, you are in some way weird. You're doing it differently. You're in the minority. You're difficult. You're pandering to their needs. You're not thinking about the bigger issues. There's a persuasion to get you back into mainstream education. If you say you're going to home educate, or your child says they want to home educate, the immediate response is to get them back into mainstream. We're not listening. We're not listening to why children want to be home educated. And instead we're debating it in Parliament under a bill that has well-being in it twice and is so big that it cannot be digested. And there are parts in that bill, there are individual parts that could be of merit to children, that could benefit children. But they will get glossed over. They will never get to see the light of day if this bill is opposed because there's so much bad stuff in it. Or flip it the other way. There are a few good things which will see the light of day, but the bad stuff, because a few good things were in it, is also going to see the light of day. It's an insanely big bill that shouldn't be together. It should be dissected in different parts and each part debated for its own individual merit. But the headline, if anyone's feeling uncomfortable about this, is that the state are looking to control the educational outcomes of all of our children. And they are looking to do so under their own ideology, not the parents. They are taking away parental rights. Now, when I said this will affect you somehow, here's how it will affect you somehow. For some children, going to school is trauma-inducing. Trauma doesn't really go anywhere. It sits like a poison. Some people are able to help it, have counselling, have therapy, do work with it. But for so many people, trauma is a permanent scar on their body. And as they go through life, that trauma can re-emerge. It affects everyone and everything around it. So if we look back to how many children were traumatised in our own generation, and I say this as a woman of 49, who had special educational needs at school that weren't met. Now, fortunately, my family met my needs. So I was extremely lucky that the not great time in certain areas at school was slightly countered by my family supporting me. But so many children that we will have known did not get that support. And look at where that takes you. It doesn't just disappear. For the child that was always isolated, always in detention, never heard. For the child back in years gone by that had the cane or the slipper and thinks it's okay to carry on doing that. We all bear the scars of our childhood. But instead of learning from that, we want to give more scars to more children. And we put it under the umbrella of raising standards. We want all children to achieve. We want all children to be aspirational. Some kids just want to get through the day. And we think that's enough. We think that's good enough. I've written so many notes on this, but my heart has spoken perhaps more than it should have done. But just some of the logistics on this. The state power wants to build a database with all of our children's IDs, medical histories, educational needs, everything on it. And as one of the lawyers, Michael Charles, involved in this, has said, we need democratic accountability, but this is surveillance. And it's exactly what it is. We've talked about why this is so important, and yet we haven't addressed the fact that no one's there. If you go on Parliament TV, MPs aren't there, yet the Department for Education is saying that we're listening. Our own MPs are not. This is so underrepresented. Any social media thread you go on, you will see a list of MPs who didn't turn up, who couldn't be bothered. Yet we're flying the flag for lifting 450,000 children out of poverty. Every Labour MP will tell you that that is their proudest moment, that they've lifted 450,000 children out of poverty. Yet they couldn't be bothered to attend a debate about children's education and well-being, which is threatening children's emotional and mental health in a way that we've never seen before. So we want to buy them a breakfast, but we don't want to nurture their mind and their soul. It makes no sense. So I'm going to leave my notes, actually. I will link the bill to this. It's impossible. It was designed to be impossible. And I haven't been able to wade my way through it. And I mean, perhaps that is part of my dyslexic nature and my processing I don't understand. But I struggle with making sense of this. And I think that's intentional. And particularly when you think about children with special educational needs. And here's the uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. That old phrase, the apple doesn't fall far. I am phenomenally dyslexic. My daughter is phenomenally dyslexic. But as her advocate, working alongside her, it is my responsibility to be abreast of this stuff. But if this stuff is written in a way that I can't interpret it, what hope have we got? Our children with special educational needs will come from families who in their DNA have special educational needs. Who are we targeting? Both groups. Two groups of people who have had to fight for a right to do things their way. There are so many traumatised adults traumatised from their school experience. And we haven't learned and we aren't listening. And now we're doing the same. So when the Department for Education say we're listening, they're not. Because when we fought tooth and nail against VAT on education and it was wrapped up as posh, rich parents who had broad shoulders, who could absorb this, when it was wrapped up as Tarquin, Jemima, Tabitha, all of the rude, condescending, bullying slurs, it was wrapped up as do your bit, stop dodging tax, stop trying to find loopholes. You are not a valued member of society because you're not prepared to do more. Now look at what's happening. We have a SEND system that couldn't cope in the first place, that is now on its knees. And we have tens of thousands of children within the last 14 months who have been pushed back into a trauma-inducing education. And we think that's okay. But we're celebrating lifting 450,000 children out of poverty, claiming we care. Lifting children out of poverty, we shouldn't have children in poverty. But it's part of the jigsaw. And this bill is not addressing children's needs. And the very fact that it's got well-being in it twice says more than I ever could.